Excited to talk to our next guest, Andrew Sarpolis. He's the senior organizing representative for the Sierra Club Michigan chapter, along with Christy McGillivray. Did I get that right, Christy?
You did.
You're like, well, kind of close.
No, you did.
How are you both doing today?
Good.
Excellent. Thanks for having us.
The Sierra Club has been around, well over 100 years, but it really is an organization that is so close to the hearts of so many people, because if we don't take care of Mother Earth, we're not going to be here. How did the two of you get involved in this organization? Christy, I could start with you.
Oh, sure. I've been a nonprofit environmental advocate since 2004. I've done all sorts of advocacy with Clean Water Action, and as an educator, I used to also work for the Farmington Hills Nature Center doing environmental education. And I was actually pulled out of the classroom. I was teaching high school in East Point, and the Sierra Club recruited me to come specifically work on PFAS contamination and on the shutdown of Line 5 in the Straits of Mackinac. And since then, my title has changed. I'm currently working as the political and legislative director for the chapter, and that's kind of a short summary.
So look at that, like from the classroom to the halls of Lansing. Boy, what a career for you. And how about you, Andrew?
Well, my appreciation for just the outdoors and nature actually started pretty early in my life. I was a Boy Scout, and I actually went all the way to Eagle Scout, and there was a period of my life where I was camping every single month, nonstop for many, many years on end. So I had a very deep appreciation for our environment from a very early age. Went all over Michigan and stayed at many of our beautiful recreation sites. But I really got my start in the career. I was actually an intern with Rep. Rashida Tlaib, who was in the State House at the time. And, there was a big fight on the Detroit River over the storage of petroleum coke, which was an enormous issue. And I worked on that a little bit. And that's how I came to partner with this group called the Sierra Club, right? And they liked what I did, so eventually I ended up there, and it's been 8 years now. So I just really enjoyed the whole time.
So with that, Andrew, can I ask you, do you anticipate or do you hope after this past year of COVID and so many people have really explored our outdoors that it's going to spark enthusiasm for Mother Nature?
Yes, very much so. And actually, there was a very exciting announcement from the governor's office the other day that they're going to be investing a lot more in recreation, outdoor recreation. The amount of people we're seeing using public parks and these recreation spaces is at almost record numbers in some cases. I like to frequent Belle Isle, and they've had to close Belle Isle, unfortunately, several times just because the volume of traffic of people coming in during the holiday weekends has been really high, and many of the other parks I visited is the same way. So I think people are getting outdoors and reconnecting after being locked in so long. And I think they're seeing the wonderful things that are out there, and I think that can really only help us. When people have an appreciation of the systems that they kind of live in, and how we're all connected to it.
And we really are lucky to be in Michigan. I know in the middle of the winter time, I'm not necessarily saying that, but we do have such amazing seasons as well. And, to be able to explore and to see how Mother changes through those seasons, we're very lucky here in the state of Michigan. But Christy, you had mentioned Line 5. It's getting a lot of publicity right now. Can you tell us more about your work on that?
Sure. The Sierra Club is one of a founding member of the Oil and Water Don't Mix Coalition, and that is a coalition of nonprofit organizations, the Great Lakes Business Network, Indigenous tribes in Michigan. It's a really broad organization that's dedicated to shutting down Enbridge's Line 5 pipeline, which is a pipeline that actually runs through the entire state, but it also runs through the Straits of Mackinac. It's over 60 years old at this point. It poses a clear and imminent threat. We actually have seen fantastic action from Governor Whitmer to order the shutdown. She has ordered that the easement that Enbridge uses to operate Line 5 be revoked. And she did that after a very lengthy process determining the level of threat and danger that Enbridge poses to the Great Lakes. Part of that is based on their Line 5B spill in Kalamazoo in 2010. They're responsible for one of the largest inland oil spills. I think it's the largest inland oil spill, and it's here in Michigan back in 2010. So, Governor Whitmer has done all she can. Now we are waiting for the courts to side with Governor Whitmer and enforce the shutdown. And we are also working to put pressure on the Biden administration to support her authority in revoking the easement and shutting the pipeline down. So we're really hopeful. As Andrew said, we want to make sure that everyone has access to enjoying our Great Lakes. They're an economic driver for our state. They also serve important cultural purposes for the indigenous tribes that have sovereignty in different parts of our state. And we are cautiously optimistic that we are going to get there and take this really necessary step to protect our Great Lakes.
So is this tied up in the federal courts right now?
We're actually hoping that it gets sent back to state courts. And the reason for that is that the legal argument is that Governor Whitmer has the ultimate authority in whether or not that pipeline continues to operate. The core of the argument is that the state granted the legal authority for the pipeline to be built in the first place. The easement that was granted to Enbridge that allowed them to build the pipeline was granted by the state, which means the state has the authority to revoke it, not the federal government. So we are gunning for that. The case to be remanded and stay in state court.
So, Christy, too, you mentioned PFAS. What exactly is it, and why is it becoming such a big issue here in Michigan? Is it the same problem like in Ohio and other states as well?
Yeah, it's really widespread. It's a huge issue all over the country. PFAS is a class of chemicals. It refers to any chemical that has a chlorine-fluorine bond. And that's the stuff that makes Teflon. We're most familiar with it, but it's in thousands of other consumer products. It's even in mascara and dental floss. There are a whole different, there are a whole different wide variety of uses for all these different chemicals. It's a family of chemicals. However, they're incredibly persistent. They bioaccumulate and they pose a direct health risk. They're associated with certain types of cancer, gastrointestinal issues, autoimmune issues. They're really concerning. There's two types of PFAS that have been voluntarily phased out by industry because they're so dangerous, but there are up to 5,000 chemicals in this family. So long story short, there are hotspots of PFAS contamination all over our state. Landfills are a really big source. Chrome plating facilities. So we have a really long industrial history, so folks are familiar with that. Airports. Military bases, these are the places that you can expect to see really serious concentrations of PFAS. And in long story short, you can't really clean it up. We can't destroy it because the bond between that carbon and fluorine is so strong. So you just have to store it. And we're actually seeing it accumulate even in our wastewater treatment plants and the solids that are left over from our wastewater treatment plants. And those solids actually go back onto fields, and so it winds up bioaccumulating in food. And there's even a recent report from Garrett Ellison on MLive that we're seeing PFAS in our rain. So all of that means is that because of its widespread use, it's impossible to contain once it's in the environment. So our position at Sierra Club is that we need to ban the sale and use of PFAS, except for some very limited exceptions, because that's the only way that we're actually going to be able to control how it moves through our ecosystem. And that was like a really heavy, depressing topic. So sorry to go there like really fast. But,
no, but how do we clean up what is in our environment now?
We can't. We have to store it. It's similar to nuclear waste. Once it's made, it is almost impossible to destroy. It's a particularly durable compound. And that's why it's had so many industrial uses. So for example, for any outdoor enthusiasts, if you have Gore-Tex or something that repels water, that's PFAS. So the actual molecule is both hydrophilic and hydrophobic, which means one part of it loves water and one part of it hates water. And that gives it all sorts of interesting properties and applications in consumer goods. However, unfortunately, it's also incredibly toxic.
I'm sitting here just thinking about, how did we even get here? For so many years, our, industrial businesses and companies haven't always been the most responsible, and our governments have not always been good at trying to monitor some of these companies as well, and that's how we end up in these situations. Andrew, if I can kind of bring you back into the conversation here, you're the senior organizing representative. How do you try to get people involved in some of these pretty heavy issues?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of ways people can get involved, and I think the first part of it is realizing the power that citizens have. I think some people, like, don't necessarily realize, and one of the things Sierra Club does very well is, we put citizens in the driver's seat when it comes to speaking with their elected representatives and getting policy changes. As Christy could tell you a little bit, every year the chapter holds lobby days where we take ordinary people from around the state and we bring them to the state capitol. In normal times, in COVID times, we've had to adapt a little bit, but we have them meet with their representatives about these issues. A lot of this PFAS stuff and a lot of these other pollutants, they're regulated at state level, they're regulated at the federal level. So we need to, if we want to have changes, we need citizens that are passionate and engaged and that care about these issues and are willing to go, to Lansing or to DC and really talk about it, because that's how we get things changed, is when the elected representatives are hearing a groundswell from the bottom that's saying we need to do this. Otherwise, unfortunately, just the way politics is, there's a lot of money and there's a lot of apathy otherwise. So the other thing is people need really, I think an overlooked tool, and if there's one thing I can say, is that people need to get involved at the local level. There's so much that can be done at local government. And, there's these planning commissions, there's these zoning boards of appeals, there's these things that nobody pays attention to, and yet they have such incredible impacts on the lives of us every day relative to our federal and state governments. So people can really make a difference just by, a lot of these legislators have coffee hours. Go to the coffee hours. If you don't know what to talk about on the environment, groups like ours have put together a lot of talking points. We have like issue primers. Like, you can read up on this stuff and then just go have a conversation with one of these decision makers. And I think that's one of the most powerful things people can do. And that's actually a lot of what we do at Sierra Club, is just connecting people on these issues. So,
how's it been to try to connect people in a pandemic?
Oh man, we've really had to adapt. One of the things that really concerns me a little bit about it is not everybody has access to a computer or, some sort of digital resource. And oftentimes, especially when we talk about, I deal a lot with energy pollution, we talk about environmental justice and, where are these coal plants located? Where are the communities that are being most polluted? We have a zip code in Detroit, 48217, that has steel mills, it has coal plants, it has a major expressway, it has a major border crossing where all these trucks are idling and they're sending out diesel exhaust. It's got all sorts of industrial facilities. It wasn't meeting federal air quality standards for sulfur dioxide or for the chemicals that cause ozone pollution as well. So it's like these are the communities that also, unfortunately, have the least access to a lot of the digital resources that are needed to organize. So it's been a real challenge. We're trying to explore, now that we have some vaccination out there, can we move to a hybrid model? But we've been on Zoom a lot, and I think people are getting the Zoom fatigue, even the people that have it. And it remains an ongoing struggle, but we try to use, relationships, right, to get information out. And so if there's hearings or stuff, we lean on the communities to help disseminate that. But where we can, we try to continue to keep things as much as normal on Zoom and digital platforms.
Well, and let's hope this year, too, some of the events come back, like our festivals and our fairs, because I know that's typically a good outreach revenue or avenue for organizations such as yours.
Yep, definitely.
And so with that, too, Christy, if I can ask you, as someone who went from the classroom to now the legislative side, what advice would you give to parents who are thinking about wanting to get their kids more engaged in some of the issues that are going on with our environment?
So my background is in environmental education. So I have a really strong rule that there's no tragedy before age 10. It's just too much. Like I was talking about, like climate change is really heavy. PFAS, like that's a lot to deal with. So, Andrew talked about how he grew up camping and spending time outdoors and loving the outdoors. Same with parents. It's usually not too much of a financial burden to get to our state parks. But if you even have restrictions on that, a garden, even a garden on your front porch. Spending time in city parks. We have at Sierra Club, we have an Outdoors for All program, and we actually have an Outdoors for All staffer who works in the city of Detroit to help connect kids in Detroit to the recreational spaces that we have in Detroit. So I would recommend spending time outdoors. One of the things that one of my professors said when I was in college is that, if you can name every single model of car, you should be able to name every single species of tree. So we can't love what we can't name. So I would just really encourage that love, help children, name the plants and animals in their community, and just, enjoy it right now. And then, call me when they get to middle school and they want to start dealing with some of the more intense stuff.
And with that, though, Christy, are you encouraged with some of the efforts that we're seeing in the city of Detroit to at least start to address some of these issues? But, urban farming has really become pretty popular within the city, and do you think it's enough, or do we still have a long way to go?
I think that, Andrew mentioned the air quality issues in 48217. I think there are some really big structural impediments to making everyone feel like they're safe outside, right? Everyone saw the viral video of the gentleman walking in Central Park who was a birder, and he was a black man, and he had a woman call the police on him. So we have these air quality issues. We have the general sense of safety that not everyone can share in the outdoors, and that needs to be addressed. That being said, we're talking about these things, and we are taking steps towards dealing with them because we're naming them. So I am hopeful in the work that I see happening in Detroit and other spaces as well. Like you said, attendance at our state parks is just through the roof. Garrett, our staffer in Detroit, does amazing work with the Outdoors for All program. There's Black to Land in Detroit, which does really amazing work. So I am hopeful. The kids are all right. We see a lot of really exciting stuff happening.
We have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. So with that, Christy and Andrew, I so appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.